Hey everyone, what's up? My name is Gaurav and this is Neat Design. So today we are going to see how to create this layouts using the CSS Grid so that you will have a basic understanding of how CSS Grid works and you can use them in your projects. Okay, so without any further ado, let's begin. So first of all, let's create the markup. So in my text editor, I have this markup.html file with the basic HTML template. So let's change the title to CSS Grid Layout and let's link our CSS file in it. So styles.css. So we are going to create 6 types of layouts. So in body, let's create 6 divs and also give them their own classes. So div into 6, that will create 6 divs for us. So now let's create some spacing so it will be easy to work on. Okay, so I have created some spacing. So now let's start with the second one because the first one doesn't need any class. So for the second one, I'm going to say template-to call, okay, which will be a 2-column grid. So let's paste it to all the divs and let's change their own classes. Okay, so the third one will have 3-column grid, okay, and the fourth one will have, let's say, template 4 up, so we will have 2 rows and 2 columns. And for the fifth one, let's say template dash sidebar dash left, and for the last one, let's say template dash sidebar dash right. Okay, so now in those divs, let's create some span according to our need. So in the first div, we are going to create 3 spans and also let's give them their own numbers so it will be easy to understand. For the second div, we need only 2 spans because it is a 2-column grid, so we need 3 spans for the third column. Okay, and for the fourth div, we need 4 of these, so let me copy and paste one more span here. And for the sidebar, we need 3 in each div. Okay, so 3 in 5th div and 3 in the last div. Okay, so let's save it. So now let's see what we have got with this in the browser. So as you can see, we have got these 6 rows with that markup. So now let's start styling it and let's create some CSS grids. Okay, so I am here in styles.css file. So first of all, let's target this universal selector and let's say box sizing to border box for all the elements. Okay, and now let's target the body and let's give it a background of white smoke, which is an off-white color, and let's give it a height of 100 vh and let's say font family to Helvetica Neue, which is one of my favorite font, and sans serif as our fallback font. Okay, let's set the margin to 0 because the body has some default margin on it, so I'm saying margin 0 on top and bottom and auto on each side. Okay, so as you can see, we have removed that default margin. So now let's target those divs. So let's target them, all of them, by selecting div. Okay, and let's say background of white and let's give them height of 30 vh, so it will be relative to viewport height. Let's say padding of 16 pixels all around. So now let's target those spans inside those divs. So span will have a background of greenish shade, so 055 A5B. Okay, so as you can see, they have got this green background. Let's say border radius of 4 pixels. Okay, color of white, and let's say font size of 1.6 rem. Okay, so as you can see, they have got this white color and green background. So now let's create a grid starting from the body. So to create a grid, we need to declare the display property as grid. So first of all, let's display it on a body, so display grid. Now let's create columns by saying grid dash template dash columns, and let's use this keyword called repeat. So for the first value, I'm not setting any number. Instead, I am using this keyword called auto fit and 18 rem for the width of the columns. So let me explain this a bit. So what auto fit does is automatically is it sees what is the available space in the window and what is the width of the column. So in this case we have this column width of 18 rems, okay, and it calculates how many 18 rems columns are possible in this window's width, okay. So if I shrink this window, and now it calculates that it is not possible to fit 3 columns in that window space, so it will collapse to the 2 column grid, and again it calculates that it is not possible to fit 2 columns in this space, so it collapses to the 1 column grid, okay. Similarly, if we expand this window and the number of columns increases by the window size, okay. So now let's define some more grid properties. So let's remove this border, okay, and instead of giving border we can say grid dash gap, and let's say 5 of the viewport height. So now you can see that we have got this grid gap, okay. So now let's place them in the center of the window by using this property called place content, which is a shorthand for align content and justify content, okay. So let's save it. So now our divs are moved in the center, and also we got this 5 VH of grid gap. So now let's define a max width on the body. So I want the body to have maximum of 3 columns in the available space, okay. So let's do that by using the max width property. So let's use the calc function here and let's define the number of rows. So we have defined 18 rem on the grid template column, so let's use that. So 18 rem into 3, so this is a space for our 3 columns, plus we have this grid gap of 5 VH, so let's add that. So here we have 3 columns and 2 grid gaps, so let's add that. So in bracket let's put 5 VH into 2, okay, and also I'm going to give it a padding of 1 rem, and let's add that 2 rems in it. So we have added a padding of 1 rem on top, right, bottom and left, but in calculation of columns width only the right and left padding adds up, okay. So that's why I have added it 2 rems, okay. So let's close it by typing semicolon. So now you can see that our body will have maximum of 3 columns because we have set the maximum width using this calc function for the 3 columns, and we have used here auto fit. So the auto fit will see that there is no enough space for the 4th column, and it is going to restrict the columns to the 3 column grid, okay. But if we shrink it down, we can have a 2 column grid and also 1 column grid, okay. So that is the advantage of the auto fit, okay. So now let's move on to the divs. So for divs, let's add some box shadows. So let's say box shadow, and 0 pixel for the horizontal axis, 2 for the vertical, 6 pixel for the blur, 0 for the spread, and let's use RGBA color. So 000, which is black color, and 0.13 transparency of that color. So as you can see, we have got this awesome box shadow effect. So now also display it as a grid. So our span will have a grid columns, okay, and let's give it a grid gap of 0.5 rem. Okay, so we can clearly see each of the columns. Okay, so now let's move on to the span elements, and for the span elements we need those numbers in the center. So to do that, let's display it as a grid, and now let's use this place items property and let's set it to center. So the difference between place items and place content is that place items places items within that cell, while the place content places the whole content in that window. So let me show the difference here on that div element. Okay, so here let's say place items to center, so this will move these spans in the center. Okay, but here if you see in the dev tools that the columns width remain the same. Okay, but if you say it to, let's say, place content, so the whole content moves to the center. So this is the difference between the place content and the place items. So please remember that place items doesn't affect the row height and row width, while the place content moves the entire content according to your value. Okay, so now enough of that explanation, let's start creating our columns. So now let's create a comment here for each columns. So the first one is a 2 column, and we have given a class of template-2 call. So for this column what we are going to do is grid template columns, and we are going to use the repeat function, and we are going to say 2 columns of 1 fraction. Okay, so as you can see we got 2 columns grid here. So there is another way to create the same results. We can say 1fr instead of using the repeat keyword. So let's copy this whole thing and paste it here, and let's change the comment to 3 column, and also change the class to template-3 call, and here again we can say 1fr, or we can use the repeat keyword also. So now let's move on to the 4up grid. Okay, so we have given a class of template-4up. So here what we can do is we say 1fr, that will create 4up grid, so 2 columns and 2 rows, or else there is another way we can let's copy this thing first and comment it out. We can specify rows also, but in our markup if we add 2 more items to that column, let's copy these 2 spans and paste it here. So now it becomes 3 up column. So to avoid that we need to specify also the rows. So let's do that, template rows, and also we are going to say 1fr. So the first 4 will have equal width and height, and after that we get the auto height and width on the columns. Okay, so let's remove these things, and we can also use a shorthand property for this. So rather than specifying columns and rows separately, we can use grid template, and the first value is going to be this rows value, and the second value is going to be the columns value. Okay, so to verify it let's add another column to the column. So as you can see, this is the columns value and this is the row one. Okay, so let's create 1fr. So now let's move on to our sidebar. So let's again copy this whole thing, paste it here. So first one is the sidebar left. So let's change it to template dash sidebar dash left. So now let's use grid template areas here. So let's say grid template areas. So for the sidebar left, what we need to do is we need to specify the keywords which are grid areas in the double quotes. So let's say sidebar and main A, and again for the second row we want the sidebar and main content B. Okay, so now let's copy this class and let's target the pan and end child 1. Okay, and for the first child we are going to define the grid area to sidebar. Okay, so this is a simple way to create a sidebar. Okay, but here you need to also define the grid template columns. So I'm going to create 2 column grid here. Okay, and also you need to specify grid area for other pan items as well. Okay, so for the second we are going to say main A, and for the third one main B. Okay, so this is going to give us the same result, and this is a proper way to create a grid template areas. Also you can use a shorthand property here of grid template. So here what you need to do is first you need to write down those keywords. So sidebar and main A, and again sidebar and main B, and for columns what we need to do is we need to use the slash symbol, and then we need to define the columns. Okay, let's comment out these things. So this is also going to give us the same effect. So now let's move on to our next layout, which is the sidebar right. So let's change that comment to sidebar right. Let's also change that class to sidebar right. Okay, and let's remove that thing here. So grid template will have now main A and sidebar, and here also main B and sidebar. Okay, so now we have to define grid area. So let's copy this thing. So instead of making the first item to sidebar, we are going to make the third item as a sidebar here. Okay, we haven't got that effect. What is the issue here? Okay, so we haven't changed the class name of left to right. So let's do that. So as you can see, that created the sidebar right layout. So that's it guys, we have created these 6 layouts using the CSS Grid layout, and I hope you have learned something from it. And if you do, please click on that like button. Also subscribe to my channel. Please find the CodePen link in the description below. There you can find the code or whatever we have done today. So that's it guys, I suggest you to watch other videos on CSS grids and also read articles and also practice by yourself, so that will give you deeper understanding on how to use CSS grids. Okay, see you soon, bye.